Why isn't America a direct democracy? Why do we have things like the Electoral College? How come the president doesn't win based on the popular vote? Isn't America supposed to be a country ruled for the people, by the people? Well, if you've ever wondered any of these questions, you're not alone. In a Pew Research study, 66% agreed that a direct democracy is better than a democratic republic. Then how come we have a democratic republic? Let's jump into a little history. At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the Founding Fathers were trying to devise a balanced way to elect the president. They didn't want the president to be selected solely by a group of political elites, like Congress or the state legislature, and they were a little terrified at the idea of direct popular election, since there was no telling who the idiot masses might pick. Hold on. The idiot masses? Are the Founding Fathers insulting us? Or are the masses really that idiotic? I decided to ask around to find out how much the public really knows about politics. Are we really fit to make informed decisions about who will become our next leader? Let's find out.
Donald J. Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Mike Pence.
I know this so much. I know this. My grandma. Great weeks before this, getting there. Love it.
No, I don't think it's him.
Senator Warner. I'm missing the second.
Not both of them.
No, I don't actually remember who the had the election not long ago. I'm not sure who won.
Warren and I'm not sure.
Now it's like some of them are okay.
No. I don't even know what they're trying to do with it right now. I know it's changing very rapidly.
I know that they're trying to keep the peace by keeping the nuclear deal. It's hard to explain.
Oh yeah.
Iran's nuclear deal. She made Christmas. Maybe something to do. I don't know. I really don't know. I would be guessing.
The what? Tell me again. One more time.
The Iran nuclear deal?
Alright, so Iran has this deal. Can I just say no?
Yeah. In order to protect our democratic foundations, Americans are encouraged to vote. In fact, voting is considered such an essential part of American culture that even Pizza Hut endorses it. At the turn of the 20th century, political scientists pointed the finger at the youth. This article, published by the IDEA in 2006, specifically points out the problems with young voters, saying that while concerns over lower levels of turnout among younger people are not new, the degree of non-participation is becoming increasingly troubling. But campaign initiatives to increase voter turnout, especially among the youth, have proven to be successful. A Pew Research study published in April of 2018 shows that voter turnout rates in presidential elections have a general increasing trend. But just because we have more and more people voting doesn't mean those people are necessarily informed about what they're voting on. And an uninformed population that ultimately has the power to decide the fate of a nation is exactly what the Founding Fathers feared. So just how ignorant is the population about political matters? As surprising as it may seem, based on a Pew Research poll, only 34% of participants knew what the three branches of the federal government are. Based on a Rasmussen report from 2017, a whopping 76% of Americans admit they are uninformed voters. In addition to making little effort to seek out information, most voters also do a poor job of evaluating what information they do know. Partisan divisions cause Americans to overvalue any information that confirms their pre-existing views, while ignoring or downplaying anything that is deemed as the enemy's opinion. Partisans like to claim that the other side's voters are influenced by ignorance, but rarely consider the possibility that the same may be true of their own party supporters.
So one of the biggest things that's causing people to be uninformed in their voting today largely is the narrowness of sources that people are getting their information from. We all are now living in almost, the term to use is echo chambers, where we are surrounding ourselves almost exclusively with media and news sources that already reflect the views that we have, and so they are being geared directly towards the preconceived notions that groups of people already have. And that's something in the past didn't exist as much. The variety of news sources was much smaller in the past. We couldn't exist in those small communal subsets exclusively. You had to go outside of them in order to find information. And now with everybody having the internet wherever they go on their phones, with things like Twitter and Facebook and the pervasiveness of that constant barrage of information, you're able to exist only in the information you want to have and want to find out.
From an objective standpoint, political ignorance has not gotten significantly worse over the last 50 years, in the sense that today's levels of political knowledge are roughly the same as they were back then. However, it is striking that knowledge hasn't increased proportionally to the increase in access to information and the development of a more complex government, which requires further political understanding. Okay, we get it. Most Americans don't know what's going on when it comes to politics. But why does this even matter? Here's why political ignorance is a very serious problem for modern democracy. A democracy is ruled by the people. It's supposed to be a system in which the government can be held accountable to the public. But in order for the accountability portion of the system to work, the public needs to have some understanding about what the government is doing and what the possible effects of any said action could be. That way, the public can have some rationale in deciding who to elect as their political leaders based on their personal opinions. Let's say you don't really care about being able to hold the government accountable for their action. Political ignorance is still relevant through the fact that in a democracy, public opinion polls do have real influence on policies. Therefore, public opinion formed based on ignorance or irrationality could ultimately lead to the adoption of bad policies. Based on the concept of universal suffrage, voters should have the right to base their decision on which candidate to vote for on whatever they want. If they choose to be ignorant about the political situation, they still have the right to vote. However, voters don't tend to realize the impacts of their choices. When voters cause bad decisions due to their voluntary ignorance, it's not just them that suffers the consequences. It's everybody. As English political scientist John Stuart Mill said 150 years ago, the exercise of any political function, either as an elector or as a representative, is power over others. So why is it that in this age of technology, communication, and information, citizens choose to be ignorant? Well, if you're like most people, you're more likely to spend more time acquiring information and thinking about what car to buy than when you decide who to vote for president or any other political office. That's not because the car is more important than who becomes the president or that the car deals with more complicated issues. It's just because you know that your decision on what car to buy will directly affect your life. Most people know that the odds of a single vote deciding the outcome of an election are infinitesimally small. From the standpoint of the ordinary voter, It makes sense to pay little attention to political issues, and instead devote most of your time and effort to other matters. Economists such as Anthony Downs argued that it's actually rational to be ignorant about politics. What? His argument goes as follows. The cost of being an informed voter is relatively high. First of all, you have to follow the news. You do this by reading the paper, exploring online sources, watching the news, or some sort of combination. If you value the time it takes you to get informed compared to your hourly wage, it could get expensive pretty quickly. Overall, citizens feel that their personal ignorant vote doesn't really make a difference. But if everyone is adopting this philosophy, then the masses have the power to threaten democracy. Political ignorance may be one of the most important weaknesses of the modern democratic government. So, are there any solutions to this problem? Experts have suggested voter education incentives. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to an individual effort from each citizen. Although universal suffrage and voter ignorance go hand in hand, in a society where education is readily accessible to the vast majority of Americans, I urge you to take the problem of political ignorance more seriously.